The following is a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. For more information, please visit our website at dallasgenealogy.org.
And today will be me, and I'll be talking about researching our Bavarian ancestors. So we'll go ahead and get started with that. There's the Bavarian colors of the blue and white. And this is researching those ancestors. I'll start with just a little bit of history because what was Bavaria has changed over time, and that may have an influence on where you're looking for records and what records might be available. So originally it was a duchy, but then it became an electorate of Bavaria. That means they got to vote for the emperor. And then in 1806, it was succeeded by the Kingdom of Bavaria. That was the number of territories in Bavaria, Swabia, and Franconia, what were called imperial circles. And when Napoleon came in, he sort of got rid of a lot of the bureaucracy and consolidated a lot of stuff. So between the Napoleonic Wars and then the Congress of Vienna, what became Bavaria was a good bit larger than what it had been before. It received the bishoprics of Würzburg, Bamberg, Augsburg, and Freisingen, part of Passau, 12 abbeys, and 17 what were independent cities and villages. So it was a good consolidation. And the Lower Palatinate in Franconia were annexed 1815. And we'll be talking a little bit about the difference between the Upper Palatinate and the Lower Palatinate. They're completely different. When the empire unified in 1871, the Bavarian Kingdom became then a federated state of the empire. It continued to exist as a state through the end of World War I. And then in the Weimar Republic, it became the Free State of Bavaria. And in 1946, after World War II, it lost that district on the Rhine, the Lower Palatinate, which it had picked up there in the 1800s. So here we have a map sort of showing that. The light blue was what the electorate was, and you can see there's also little bits and pieces that the leaders at the time were trading territories. Like as kids, we probably traded baseball cards. But we see then 1806, then it expanded much more. This is Franconia, this is Swabia, and it did pick up that Lower Palatinate, not to be confused with the Upper, which always was and still is one of the German districts, the Bavarian districts. And in fact, here you can see the districts. So there's the Upper Palatinate. There's Franconia broken down into upper, middle, and lower. Just like we have Upper Bavaria around Munich, we have Lower Bavaria, and then we have Swabia. So those are the administrative regions. The main state archive for Bavaria is in Munich, but each of the administrative regions also has an archive, a good place to start looking for records. And then in addition to those 7 states, 7 regions, there's also Coburg has its own archive because it voted in 1920 to join Bavaria. So it had brought its records with it when it moved across into Upper Franconia. And they have some records online. Others, of course, are only available at the various archives. So now we can look at maps, gazetteers, and place name indices, because unlike here where we can find things in our national archives, a lot of the records remain at the local level. So it's really important to the extent you can to discover what is the village, the locale where your ancestors were, because often a lot of the records are there. The maps go way back. State Library of Bavaria points out here's an old chart from 1806 showing what was then Bavaria. And here's part of Franconia. And I'm highlighting it because my Meisners came from a village called Pusselsheim. And when we zoom in, there is, with that alternate spelling, Pusselsheim. And you can see these Roman numerals. Those point to the district courts and revenue offices. So for my ancestors, it was there in Gerolzhofen is where the district court records would be found. Between 1810 and 1850, the kingdom decided to do a detailed survey of every village and map it at very high resolution, scale about 1 in 1,000. So as you can see in this example here from my Pusselsheim, there you can see just about every house, every barn, and you notice they're numbered, and then the town is in the middle of all the farmyards. They're all numbered, so you can see which field belongs to which house at that time. And often when somebody was going to go and plow their field or something, the neighbors from the village would also come over and they communally all do that. And then the next day they maybe do somebody else's. But you can really zoom in. These maps are not online. Not all of them survive. And they are at the Landesamt for Vermessung and Geoinformation in Munich. So you can write to them and ask if they can send you a copy of your particular village. And then in 1871, that's when the empire formed, and the states of Prussia, Saxony, Bavaria, and Württemberg decide to map on a 1 in 100,000 scale. And that's a total of 674 sheets. The David Rumsey map collection has lots of historic maps for many, many different places. Got all those maps, digitized them, and even stitched them all together so you can view them on the website. And also there's a Google Earth, as I'm showing you here. And these are the maps that we get to the Gazetteer and Myers Gaz that it uses as well. So here's, you can see what it looks like on the website. And if you look closely, you can see all the little sections all knitted together and the whole area that's covered, which was the German Empire there in the 1870s. So as we look at gazetteers, you hopefully may be familiar with myersgaz.org. It's the website. You can go in, put the name of your village. If you're not sure the exact spelling, you can do wildcards. And if there's more than one, it will show you all the choices. And again, you want to sort of know where physically in Germany that particular site is. This is what will initially come up. Myers Gazetteer was published in 1912, and it used that old German script for the printing, plus some special abbreviations and symbols as well. And I used to do a whole seminar on that. And now you don't need to do that anymore. It shows you the map and gives you some basic information. But if you scroll down, it will show you all those different parts, the kingdom, the Regierungsbezirk, where the district office is, the lower district court. As we saw, that would be where you'd have records about property and often marriages. It has its own Standesamt, civil registration office there in the village. So that's the civil registration starting in the mid 1870s. And it tells us that Pusselsheim has one Catholic church. There is no evangelical church in the village itself. That older part of Bavaria was primarily Catholic, although the Franconias and Swabia had quite a number more of the Protestants as well. And you go again onto the site and choose the map choice, and there it comes up, and you can plot the various jurisdictions, the surrounding civil registration offices. There I've plotted the Catholic parishes, which are in yellow. The Protestant parishes are in green. So you can see there are a few there. There is one in Pusselsheim, but the red dot is overplotting the yellow one. Nowadays, they share a priest with Dorfield, just to the southwest. And if there's any synagogues, they would show up as well. Also, as a gazetteer on the CompGen website, or genealogy.net, has a historic place directory, and you can see it covers not just Germany, but a large part of Europe. You go in, and the abbreviation is GOV, and I put in my Pusselsheim and get this basic information. If you're going to write there, notice their equivalent of zip codes changed in 1993. Now it's all digits. And again, if you scroll down, it will show you in German, I've done the translations here, all the various authorities that had various hierarchy, starting at the bottom with Pusselsheim was the church village, and then there's the municipality of Donnersdorf. There we see Gerolzhofen has lower district court, and then that's in the district of Scheinfurt. In the Regierungs Unterfranken, we saw those administrative districts. And then starting in 1817 to 1946, it was the Free State, and then became the state of Bavaria there after World War I, and works its way up to the German state, to the European Union, and it's in, of course, the United Nations as part of Germany. So again, that shows you where you might be looking for records. You sort of start at the bottom, and if they don't have it, then you can sort of work your way up. Another thing to consider is German place names. My Pusselsheim had various spellings over the years. And Roger Meinhardt has a book of Bavarian place name indices. It's here in the library up on the 8th floor. And again, some of the basic questions you should consider when you're trying to figure out, well, what is the name of my village? In what language was it written? Most of Bavaria will be in German, but if it was parts of Prussia, it may have been Poland. Was it Latinized? Is it near the border? Is it something from Russia or Hungary? When was it written? Why was it written? Can you read the handwriting? Could it have been abbreviated? And if you can't read the whole writing, that's where these books come in. Meinhardt's done them from a number of places. It uses alphabetical and reverse alphabetical indices. So maybe you can only figure out the last half of the name. Well, then you go to the reverse index. And I'm starting here with the page of the Heims. And it starts with the L-Heim on the top of this page. Then we're going alphabetically the M-Heims, and then the N-Heims, which are the A-N-Heims, the E-N-Heims, the B-E-N-Heims. So just how many of these letters can you figure out? The D-E-N-Heims, the E-E-N-Heims, the F-E-N-Heims, and it continues on, as you can see. And it's on the next page is where my Pusselsheim is. So that's these reverse alphabetical indexes, which can help you figure out what might be the correct spelling of the name if you can't read the whole name. Also consider prefixes. There's Altstadt and Neustadt, the old and new. You're familiar probably with the Passion plays at Oberammergau. Well, just down the road from Oberammergau is Unterammergau. Uh, that can be for or hinter. Somebody could say they're from Durkheim, but maybe they're really from Bad Durkheim. And the person who wrote it, or the person who said it, or the person who indexed it only got the Durkheim part. Same thing with suffixes. There's an Ansbach and an Ansberg. There's Meissen, but also Meissenheim in different parts of Germany. So consider those as ways to look for that name. So now we'll look at the church records. These are baptisms, marriages, and burials. They're some of the oldest records. Prior to 1876, most were recorded in church records. Some municipalities asked the church to make a copy and put that on file with the civil archive, but you will find them in the church records, and the others are often copies. Earliest records are in Western Germany. As you go further east, they may not begin as soon. The evangelical Lutheran churches began recording baptisms, marriages, and burials in 1540. And then gradually over time, more and more of those churches came on board. And then you have to hope that those records all survived. In many cases, they were trying to protect them, but there were a number of wars going on. There's poor Bavaria with Austria to the west and France to the east, and they were sort of arch enemies for much of the time, and Bavaria sort of caught in the middle. For the Catholic records, the Council of Trent mandated baptisms and marriages start in 1563 and thereabouts, and the burial records were then added in 1614. The Calvinistic Church, the Reformed, began keeping their records by 1650. So you can see you could probably get back to the 1600s for church records, assuming they did survive. Many are still maintained by the parish. When I wrote to Pusselsheim, when they got back to me, they said, well, we have the book from 1948 onward. The older books are at the diocesan archive. So check with them. So start local, and then they'll answer. In my case, they wrote back and said, we don't have a priest anymore. So it took about 9 months to get a response. So you do have to be a little patient. They're volunteers in that case. Church records or duplicates, as I mentioned, may have been gathered from the local parishes into archives, either the church or the state archives. The older records have sort of been mandated to start to go to the archives. And some gaps that the parish may not have, there may be a copy at those other archives. The Catholic Church was the predominant church in Bavaria, so there are 6 dioceses. So you have to pay attention to which one were your ancestors in, and the borders did shift around a little bit. Here you can see those, and they have privacy laws, and they're going to vary a bit for the kind of record. So typically for the Catholic records, that it's 120 years for baptismal records, then they become public. Marriage and burial records after 100 years. So you're not going to find too much in the way of current. You're going to have to go sort of further back in time. And it's up to each bishop to decide what records they will make publicly available beyond these particular years. And if they have a book that maybe has some baptisms from 110 years ago, they may do the rest of the book, it's older records, or they may decide until the whole book is available, none of the book is available. So you have to worry about that. So now these are appearing a lot on the website Matricula, which is a free website. So that's a great benefit. From Augsburg, their books for 904 parishes are available. For Bamberg, they did their entries up to 1875, and it has about 80% of the parishes. After 1875, there was civil registration, so they figured, oh, you can get the records there. Some of us might like to have both for comparison and for the additional information. The baptismal records, of course, have the godparents, who are probably friends, associates, neighbors. And in the civil registration record, you'll just have the person who reports it. For Eichstatt, as of April 2022, that's the latest I could find, they have about 2,100 registers from 220 parishes on matricula, freely available. Munich and Freising do things a little bit differently. They have their own website where they put all their records. There are links on the matricula site that will take you to that website. And there you can see the actual link to it. But if you go to matricula, it will send you to those records. For Passau, in addition to the record images on matricula, the diocese developed an index, and they have that on their website. Most of these records, unless there's an index in the book, on matricula, there is no big index. So you may have to go page by page for a particular register. But in the case here at Passau, they have an index. So you can actually search on their site for the name, and then it'll point you to the record on matricula. Regensburg is working to put all the registers online, at least up to 1876. And there's my Würzburg for Büsselsheim. And up to this point, I've had to hire somebody to go to the archive and get the records for me. Now, finally, because I've been doing this a long time, they're starting to add them. Currently, they have the parishes from A to G, with also the towns of Schweinfurt and the town of Würzburg. And their planned completion date is 2026, the end of next year, knock on wood. And my Pusselsheim, of course, is in the last half of the alphabet. So finally, maybe at the end of next year, I'll be able to get them online and won't have to pay hundreds of dollars for someone to please go there and get the records for me. They do a very good job. You get what you pay for, and they do a good job. Okay, the Lutheran Church, because we're not quite as many folks there in Bavaria, only has one diocese. There's lots of people that belong to that. The official state church was formed in 1809. The archive is in Nuremberg. And they have a different privacy. So baptism records after 90 years, not 100. Marriage records, 70 years. Burial records, just 30 years. Many of their registers are on the pay site Archeon. But Archeon, you don't need a subscription to go to the site and work your way all the way down to see what registers they have available. And you can check to see, oh, do they have them for the ones you're interested in or not? If they have them, then you can buy not really a subscription, because it's not a perennial thing. You can get a month, 3 months, or a year. And occasionally there are discount cards that are available. When we did our meeting last year, we had some discounts for folks here in the library. I know a number of the booths at RootsTech have mentioned Archeon has given them some discounts to hand out if you're physically there. Other records, of course, remain at the parish office. Okay, to show they are adding records even as we speak, you can go on the Archeon site and see what they've added lately. And just last month, you can see they were doing some from the Evangelical Lutheran Church in Bavaria, in Ansbach, Gunzenhausen, Neustadt on der Reich. So they are still adding a few records. So if it's not there now, keep track and they may be still adding things. Now there's that lower Palatinate, which again, from about the early 1800s to 1946 was part of Bavaria and is now separate. Their records are from the Diocese of Speyer, and their bishop decided to do things a bit differently. The Catholic records are on Archeon, not Matricula. So to see the actual records, if they have them for your site, you would have to buy the license. But again, you can go through and check to see if they actually have the information. Their protection periods are just a little bit different. 120 years for baptisms, 100 years marriage and deaths. They have most of their Catholic records done. It's more than 2,300 church books from over 250 parishes. So the odds are they probably have the records, but it's on Archeon. The Lutheran records for the area are also on Archeon. And again, until about 1946, then it became part of the new state that they formed. Their protection periods, again, are the Protestant ones. And you can go on Archeon again, get those records. Okay, that was the church records. Then we have the civil registration records. They started in Bavaria on the 1st of January, 1876. It's the civil registrar keeps them at the civil registry office. We saw my village of Huselsheim has one. Sometimes it may be a satellite village, and Myers-Gaz would hopefully tell you where the record, at least in 1912, were being formed. There was some changes in 1971, some of the boundaries. Okay, their privacy laws say 110 years for births, 80 years for marriages, 30 years for deaths, and that's nationwide. If you're looking for something more recent than that, if you can show you are a direct descendant, which means you're the child, not the nephew or niece, the brother or sister, the parents could likely get the information. If you can prove that everybody is dead, then you can actually get some additional records. And if you look on the Family Search Wiki, it will tell you on the page for civil registration. And again, these are all on the handout as well. It gives you an idea to look and see where you might find them. Family Search has some of the records, and you have to go into the catalog, look for your location, and then look for civil registration images to see if there's any have been indexed. Some may have an index, some may only be the microfilm, and some may even still be locked. Often here in the States, we can get access to records that genealogists in Germany can't online because their privacy laws are a little bit more strict. And here you can look on Ancestry. This is a recent screen capture. And I'm looking for birth, marriage, and death records. I picked the location of Germany and then Bavaria, and then said I'm looking for a title of births and the keyword of civil, as in civil registration, and it'll show me these are the records that Ancestry, which is a subscription site, although most libraries have free access to it, as do family history centers. You can see this is what they have. It's a limited number, but these are all Bavarian. And these are births. And then these are marriages. which look like they're just about the same locations. And then for deaths, they have a few more. And these again are on Ancestry, and you need a subscription or be in a place that has a subscription, like the library here in Dallas. What the records look like, they're pre-printed forms, so it makes it a little bit easier to translate. It's sort of standard things and fill in the blanks. This is an early book, and I wanted to pick it because of the marginal notes. Usually the registrations of births will all have an A in the upper corner. And you see you can get the basic names of the information. And you want to look for the marginal notes. And if you're writing to the Civil Registration Office, sometimes this use a form and you ask for, can I have an actual copy of the record? Because that will have those marginal notes. And here you can see in this particular case, when they registered the birth, they didn't yet have a name for this boy in 1880. So in 1881, they came back in and said, well, his names are Johann Hermann Karl Vicky. And then also notice that little stamp on the lower left that shows when he died. It's record number 286 from 1947. So that's 78 years ago. So that should be available as well. And in many cases, if somebody moved, when you move from one village to another, you had to register with the police. And they say, where'd you come from? So if you then died in that other village, in some cases, they might write back to the original village you came from, where you were maybe baptized and or married, and notify them of the death. And you may find that record there in the original village as well. But recognize people move. The civil registration of marriage will have a B. You can see that little printed B on the top right of the first page. The marriages are 2 pages. Births and burials are 1. So you always want to make sure you get both pages because it has additional information on the second page. The first page is for the groom and the bride. And it will show the religion after about 1874, which is by that time they were starting the records. And again, you get those witnesses' names, the parents' names, lots of information. In most cases we see in Germany, there's always your Stand, your place in society, your occupation, and whether you're dead or alive. So lots of good information there to help you in your research. And then there's a death, which has the C in the upper level. That will include information about parents, birth date, birthplace, other information, depending on did the informant, this is many years after the person was born, did they have the right information? So you have to be careful with that. Newspapers are another good source of information. The Bavarian State Library has a very extensive collection. It has placed many of these on their website, which is called DigiPress. And you can do full text searches of all those pages. You can also do this calendar entry. You can see they'll have things back at least as far as 1609. They have a newspaper and up to 1933. I'm not quite sure why they don't have the more recent newspapers. But you can go in, I did a search for Meisner's, and here it shows again that full text search. You can see it's in the older Fracter font, but look on the left, here it is transcribed. So I don't even have to use artificial intelligence to translate it for me. Well, to translate it, yes, but to transcribe it, you can just copy that and then put it into a translation program. This is not one of my relatives. My Heritage also has a number of German newspapers, and I'm looking for Würzburg, which is again where the the big city was, and looking for Meisner's, and it shows me some choices that they have. These are coming from their additional site they introduced last year, I think it was, Old News, which requires a separate subscription, or you can buy a combined subscription to all the MyHeritage part plus the newspaper section and a few others. So Old News has this collection. Again, they've used optical character recognition. Their focus is the mid 1700s to the mid 1900s. So there you can find at least a few more recent newspapers. And again, lots of information you can find on Old News, but again, you're going to have to pay for that. Bavarian immigration and emigration. A lot of the Germans, of course, left from Bremen or Hamburg, going up the Rhine or the Elbe, going down the Rhine or the Elbe River. But for example, the ones a lot in Bavaria, it was easier to just go west, young man, go west to Le Havre, the French port. Unfortunately, Le Havre didn't keep very good immigration records. So you'll be a little bit harder pressed to find things there. You may, in fact, want to just look at the arrivals here in the States or Canada and hopefully find something there. But here are some links. And again, these are in the handout as well. And we're placing that link into the chat. And it's also on our website as well. For Ancestry and Family Search, the information of what they have, and also a site called GermanRoots.com, which will have some Bavaria and Lower Palatinate records. Census records. Now, it used to be up to about 10 years ago or so, most people say, census records? We don't have any. I've never seen any census records for Germany. What are you talking about? So again, Roger Meinhardt took a 6-month sabbatical and did a lot of research before and afterwards. Physically went to Germany, went to the archive and says, have you got any census records? And in a number of cases, they would say, census records? No, we don't have a. He said, can I go in the back and look? Oh, sure, go on back. And in a few hours, he'd come out and said, here's your census records. Oops. And again, for a number of the places, just like here in the States as well, if you're looking for the county clerks, they're worried about today's records and not necessarily the historical ones. So most of the census records they did, here we do it because we're trying to figure out who gets representation in the House of Representatives and which state gain and which state lose. And we do every 10 years. There, they were doing it primarily because they were using collecting custom revenues and had to divvy them up among everybody who belonged to that particular customs union. So most of the records remain in the city and town archives. Some are in the regional, some there. So start again local, work your way up. They don't have indices. Most of the counts are only how many people did you have. It may just have a head of household, but there are some that do list all the family members. And this book, again, is also here in the library. And I'm hesitant about putting this link up because this is a 2016 book and Roger has a copyright. And whyarchive.org has it. I bought the book. It's here in the library. But if you go to archive.org and you can log in, you can actually see the book. Check it out one at a time. There's court cases going on and whether this is legal or not. But you go through and you'll have for every area from 1816 to 1916, content of the records and has a table here for Bavaria, 1818 to 1864. This line at the top is only head of household, which shows most of those censuses had that, but it would show how many men, how many women, and the like. But as the TV commercials say, wait, there's more. There are some records online. You may have to dig to find them. Here on Family Search has some. This is a website, Germany, Bavaria, Dinkelsbühl Miscellaneous City Records, 1804 to 1946. And lo and behold, if you go in there and look, you can find on the various microfilms that they had one that shows, oops, thought I had a thing. The Bevolkungsliste, list of the people in Dinkelshausen. And you can see here is the record, and it has the head of household and then the tick marks as we have for our early census record. And you could zoom in and you could see the name of the individual and then the various tick marks as the dwelling number, the head of household. This is 1861, the number of families, the civilian population, males over and under 14, females over and under 14, and the total civilian residents, because that's how they're going to distribute the customs fees. Then you can also go in, and this doesn't show us even a direct site. It's been digitized. It's German Bavaria Kinstigen, Einwohnerbucher, Familienbucher, Metals registers. And we're interested particularly in the Einwohnerbucher, the book of listing the residents. And you can see they have records starting in 1567. These are in sort of paragraph form, difficult to read, but you can get to the more recent ones. There's one, for example, there in 1811, and it has the images. You can go through, and there are the images. There's the book, and there's the page. You can see the information actually spans 2 pages, but there's not much on that second page. It's the Bevölkerungs table, the population table for 1811. If we zoom in, we can see there's the name of the father, the name of the mother, the names, plural if there's more than one, of the sons, the names, plural if there's more than one, of the daughters, the occupations, and the ages, which can get you back for maybe where you could find some birth records. So it shows the dwelling number, total number of souls, names of the father, mother, all the sons, all the daughters, the occupation, typically just of the parents, and the ages of the father, the mother, the sons, and daughters. So you have to go digging around in the catalog and down to your locale and just start to look for records of some sort of civil record, and then just start looking, and who knows what you might find. Military indices and records, there's no central archive. We did see Myers-Gads would tell you where the military records would be. Ancestry has some records of casualties lists and a few personnel rosters. Family Search has some military records, as does MyHeritage. This is one particular one of World War I casualties. They would print up lists every so often and list who was wounded, who died, who was taken prisoner. And they would post them up in the town. And here you can see people looking at one of the lists. And you can see I picked one here. Again, these aren't my relatives, but the lower part, there are some Meisners. And you can see where they're from and what happened to them. The information in these changes over time. They were a lot more descriptive in the early part of the war. And then they figured out the enemy was getting copies of the lists. The enemy was us and some others, the British, the French, and they started restricting how much information. And particularly as it got later on, they were all the young ones were killed or wounded, and they were drafting more and more older people. But again, it's a source of information. And there's also a map that goes with that with surnames that you can look for. Some of the influential wars was the 30 Years' War. A number of records were destroyed during that period. These were Protestant and Catholic wars, the Palatine succession. The Palatines were sort of besides just the upper and the lower that we saw, that was a title given to people who acted on behalf of the emperor. Then we had the Napoleonic Wars that came in. Napoleon did initiate some civil registration. So if you have places over there in the East, you may find some earlier records. Prussia fighting with Austria, and Prussia absorbed the armies of all the other states. Bavaria kept their army separate. Bavaria at times sided with Austria because their kings were descendants from the same emperors as in Austria. But other times they went with France. So, like I say, it went back and forth. And the armies moved back and forth, leaving their DNA and sometimes destroying records, sometimes leaving records. Okay, I mentioned earlier with St. Louis, we have the Ortsippenbucher. Anne gave a presentation on this topic recently. And again, on our website, you can find the recording and handout of that. Ortsippenbuch is place, town lineage book. Ortsfamilienbuch is the town family book. We'll have birth, marriage, and death data for all persons that could have been found in the record. So this is a secondary source of information. It was not recorded at the time of the event by someone familiar with the event, but they worked from those primary records. They looked at parish registers, civil registration, court land records, other places. Families will be listed by surname. Some have indices. Others are alphabetical, but it has a standard format and symbols. So here's a photo of the St. Louis Library, which has the largest collection of the physical books here in the States. They don't lend them out, but as I mentioned, they'll do lookups for you. And again, you need to know the town. If you don't have the town, you're not going to find anything. So this is from the St. Louis Library showing all the books they have. And I've scrolled down the list to the start of Bavaria. And this is just from Allersberg to Böbing. That's just A's and B's. And all those in blue there in Bavaria are all the books they have. And they continue to acquire new ones as they are published. So they have lots and lots of records. They can do the lookup for you. But Genealogy Net, CompGen site, has online books for, again, not just what we consider Germany. You can see the Germans from Russia. They're on the Black Sea and over in Germany, and continuing into Switzerland as well. You find it by looking for Databank and OFB, Ortsfamilienbucher. Then you can go and pick one you might be interested in. This is a Familien data bank for Hochfranken, High-Franken. And of course, the description is in German. But if you look there on the left, you can pick your language. So I pick English, and it'll tell me a bit about the book. It says there's about 7,000 people in the book. which is northeast. It's now Upper Franconia. And the person who developed this worked on it for 20 years. We're doing the research to get those 7,000 names of people. So we should be very thankful to him. This is now freely available. They didn't have Meisners, but they did have a Meisner. So I started with this particular individual of a Johann Meisner, and it has his basic information of when he was born, when he was married, where they got the information. KB is the Kirchen book for Helmbrechts, and shows when he was baptized in September, and then shows the family, shows his wife and children and his parents and his brothers and sisters. And you can see there's the basic symbols. So if we look, for example, at his wife, she was born the 15th of August, 1675. She died the 25th of November, 1737, and they had been married on the 24th of November in 1646. So then you can start to, these are all links, the names, to work your way back or down through the family. So here's the records that I came up with, and we can see there in the upper right, we have a Johannes Meisner and a Barbara Wirth. They have a son, Johannes Meister, and he married a Margarita Friedrich, the daughter of these individuals. This Johann and Margarita had a son, Johann. He married a woman, Margarita. They had a son, Johann. He married a woman, Margarita. And they had a son, Johann Nicole. So we have 4 Johanneses, 4 Margaritas, a Johann, 3 Annas, and a couple other names. But that's 1, 2, 3, 4, 5 generations all there for you, all laid out. Again, you want to verify this information, but there it is. And finally, the German genealogy resources map has been put together. Palestine to America are one of the cooperators who put this together. I don't have this in the handout. I stuck this in later, so I got the link there. It's the Palestines to America, PALAM.org, and then genealogy-map. And you can see there's Bavaria in the sort of blue, and sort of scroll down a bit, it has historical societies, municipal local archives, federal state special archives, church archives, libraries. Now, this doesn't have records, but it'll give you the contact information if there's a website as well for these various records. So if you're looking in a particular location, it has the addresses. Oftentimes now people will have, places will have Facebook or emails that you can do. You can look on family search. It's sort of nice to still write first in German and then in English, just to be polite. And on family search has tutorials with cut and paste of I'm looking for the birth record of, so then it'll have, look, I'm in German, you're looking for, and you fill in the name of the person. Again, always tell them everything you know and where you've already looked. But again, that way you can write in German and then also in English. And again, that will sort of help the person doing the archive. That not many of us speak German. A whole lot of Germans speak a whole lot of different languages now that they're in the European Union. But it is always be polite. It's important to be polite and follow the rules when you're in Germany. So that's the Palestines to America.org, the genealogy map. So that's been researching our ancestors. I appreciate your attention. If you have any questions, I don't know if anybody's put anything in the chat. I'm going to look and see what we got there. Okay, I think we just have the links to there. If you have any questions, feel free to unmute yourself. And again, this has been recorded, so the recording will be available probably even next week. The Dallas Society here is getting ready for their big seminar for the spring, which is about Irish, which is my other ancestors. My mother was an O'Hara. My dad was a Meisner. But we appreciate your attention. Again, there is a handout which has all the information that hopefully you can refer to keep you going from there. And good luck with your Bavarian research.
This has been a production of the Dallas Genealogical Society. If you're already a member, thank you. Your fees have been supporting these and other society activities. If you're not yet a member, please consider joining now. Go to dallasgenealogy.org and click on the membership tab.